Mark offers $1 million for the woman to rent her womb. She didn't hear right, so he repeats and shows the money. Jane asks what's wrong with him. He's very mistaken if he thinks she'll rent her womb to him, so he needs to grab his things and leave. He doubles the offer and asks if she would accept, but Jane still thinks he's going crazy. He's not going crazy, he's telling the truth, and if she doesn't believe him, he can prove it by giving her some money. Jane doesn't believe he's really making this offer. Her friend warns Jane to be careful with guys like this, especially those who offer a lot of money. It's very strange. Mark says he didn't come to do what they're thinking. He knows very well what they do for a living, and he was very clear about what he really wants. Now all that's left is for Jane to answer whether she'll accept or not. The other friend warns Jane to be careful with this kind of man, especially if he has any kind of power. Jane thinks for a moment and decides to accept being his surrogate. But before that, he will need to say what he really wants. Mark says his conditions are simple and easy. She just needs to come live with him for some time, and he will cover all medical expenses and everything she needs during the pregnancy, and she will need to live with him for the next 9 months. She asks if that's all. She'll just have to live with him, is that it? He says there's just one more condition. She wants to know what it is. He says it's about the conception of the baby. It needs to be done 100% naturally. Any other alternative won't be negotiable. Jane decides to accept anyway, but she says he'll need to put the money in her hand now. He says he's not a servant. If she wants the money, she can get it herself. But she responds that if that's the case, there's no deal, so he decides to do what she asked. He asks if they really have a deal, and Jane says yes. She says goodbye to her friends and co-workers to leave with Mark. The friends seem a bit worried about this situation. Jane wants to know where Mark will take her. He says she needs to meet someone first. She wants to know if these people are trustworthy. Mark wants her to meet his mother. Jane realizes she doesn't hear that often from men. He says she'll see that he's not like other men, and she'll realize that. Jane says she's never had such a strange client as him. Mark replies that he's not a client, he's the father of their child. Jane says they barely know each other, and he decides to introduce himself formally to her. She does the same. He says now that they know each other, they can leave. His mother is waiting for them for dinner, they can't be late. Mark's mother wants to know if that's the best he could get. He replies yes, a night worker, isn't that how it should be? His mother asked him to find a wife, and so he did. He fulfilled his part of the deal. She notices that Jane is a little pretty and has good attributes. Jane thanks for that, she thinks. The mother says Jane is beautiful and has beautiful eyes, they will have beautiful children, and his family will be beautiful. Finally, she will have an heir. Jane apologizes for the rudeness, but she noticed they mentioned something about an inheritance, and she was curious, because she finds their house a bit simple for the amount of money they say they have. The mother replies that this house belongs to their employees. Since she didn't know what kind of woman her son would bring, she decided to have dinner there for safety. Jane finds it absurd and asks for a little more respect. She and Mark have just met, but she is a correct person, and besides, she has an agreement with him. That's why she's there, and since she has nothing else to say, she's leaving. She wants to know which room she'll be staying in, and the mother indicates the second floor. Jane invites Mark to join her. After all, they have a baby to make. Mark says his mother doesn't know how much he hates that, but his mother doesn't care, just celebrates. Mark hopes Jane likes her room, as this will be her home for a while. She thanks for that and says everything is beautiful and comfortable. Mark explains that she can call him or his mother if she needs anything. There's also a woman who helps with cleaning. Jane can also call her if she needs. She thanks. Mark says there's nothing to do, so they can leave it for another time. He's not in the mood for these things yet. She asks him to wait. He may not be in the mood, but he needs to do it. Mark replies, it's not like that. They don't need to do it now. Jane understands. She's used to this kind of situation and knows how to handle it. Mark has already understood that she is a determined woman, but that doesn't matter. He won't do what she wants and says they'll see each other another time. Jane is disappointed, but sometime he will be hers. Jane is waiting for the pregnancy test result and realizes it's positive. They will be parents. She's happy, but Mark doesn't show the same. He realizes that his mother finally got what she wanted, but this child is not his. Jane asks Mark to wait. Where is he going? This is good news. Wasn't he happy? Mark ignores her and leaves her alone. The mother wants to know how Jane has been feeling lately. She says, well, everything is very new to her. The mother is happy to hear that. Jane thanks for that, but hopes not to be a bother to them. The mother says she's happy. Now Jane is part of the family, even if not in a natural way. Now she carries their blood, and that's why she wanted to talk. Jane didn't know it would be so important to them. The mother says yes, this baby will be very important to them. Mark is a very spoiled man and doesn't like the family, so she wants her son to get rid of the idea that the family has something against him. Jane doesn't know how she could do that. The mother doesn't know either, but Jane will need to figure it out and do it the right way because their family name is at stake. In a few days they will get married, and she bought a beautiful dress for Jane. She will love it, and she wants to see Jane beautiful in the wedding dress. Jane gets annoyed. Mark's mother bothers her a lot. If she knew that Jane likes her son, she would find it awful. Mark wants to know what his mother was doing there. Jane replies that she only came to give some pregnancy tips. He doesn't need to worry. Mark asks Jane not to lie. He knows his mother must have come to talk about how he's a terrible son. He's had enough of the family. They're very annoying, always meddling, never caring about him, only about Jane's well-being and the babies. Jane says it wasn't like that, but Mark says she doesn't understand everything he's been through with the family. Jane is outraged that Mark is complaining about being born into a rich family. Poor little rich boy. Just so he knows, Jane says she was born into a poor family. Her parents abandoned her when she was just a child, and she had to work alone to survive. He asks her to stop. Don't try to change the subject. She knows very well he didn't mean to offend her. Jane replies that he did, even though he says he didn't. He may not like her or even want to marry her, but they need to get along because they will spend a lot of time together. He says if she hadn't accepted his proposal, they wouldn't be going through any of this. Jane finds it funny that he wants to blame her. He says it's her fault. If she hadn't accepted, if she had said no, they wouldn't even be there. But if Jane remembers well, he was the one who approached her, but he insists she should have said no. Jane says if it wasn't her, it would be another woman. He needs to stop being spoiled and accept what life has in store for him. Mark doesn't know what she thinks will happen between them, because as far as he's concerned, nothing will happen. Jane believes that, but he needs to know that she doesn't want anything to happen either. He asks if that's an agreement, and Jane replies that if that's what he wants, then so be it. She doesn't want him to sleep with her then. He asks where he will sleep then, but Jane doesn't care. He should find a place. The house is quite big. He reminds her that this house is his, but Jane reminds him that the house is also his mother's, and she won't like to know that her grandson's mother will sleep on the couch. He must not have thought about that, right? Only she thinks about it. She says his mother warned that their wedding will be in a few days, and asks him to go. Mark makes it clear that he didn't want to get married. Jane understood that already, and says she didn't like the idea. His mother asked him to ask if Jane liked the dress, and she asks if Mark does exactly everything his mother asks him to do. He replies yes, almost everything, but he's just trying to make the mood more pleasant, and she could at least give a kinder response. She accepts the request and says the dress is beautiful, but it's strange for her to wear it like this. Mark suggests she take it off later and apologizes for being rude to her. It wasn't fair. She says he's like that sometimes and doesn't realize it. Mark understands that doesn't justify it, but he was very upset, and it wasn't even with her. Many times he takes it out on the wrong person. Jane forgives him. She understands he only does that because things don't go his way. He's very spoiled. He understands he needs to change. She forgives him, and now she just needs to win him completely. He says it's okay, just tell him what he needs to do, and it will be done. Jane says they will have many responsibilities now, and he will need to help her take care of the baby and the house, that kind of thing. If he wants to please her, he'll need to help with that. He asks if that's really what she wants. Jane asks if he really wants her forgiveness. He says yes, so she offers him this deal. Mark accepts. Now it's time for them to go. She needs to take off this dress. He also wants to get rid of the suit and wishes her a good wedding night. She says the same. The mother says it's the healthiest baby she's ever seen. After all, everything went as planned. She needs to thank Jane for the great service she provided. Now Mark can get rid of her. They can take responsibility for the baby. Mark doesn't understand how his mother can do this with a baby that's his, but the mother says the baby is hers. They didn't even want him, so she's doing a favor. He can tell Jane she's free to go whenever she wants. They can be happy. Mark says she can't do that. It's their child, they love each other. The mother says she can do that, they made a deal. Mark says things have changed, now he loves Jane and their child, they want to take responsibility for them. He's tired of his mother always wanting to interfere in his life, he won't allow it anymore. He loves Jane and they will take care of the family they have, the mother needs to accept that. He asks his mother to leave his house, she's not welcome there. Mark asks if Jane and the baby are okay. Jane says everything is fine with her baby and asks how he is. Mark says more or less, but he'll be fine by her side. Jane says what he did to his mother wasn't right, he loves them. He confesses that at first he didn't like the idea very much, but over time he learned to love her, she made him have a chance with love and he wants to repay that. He hopes to give her the best. Jane wants to know what they're going to do now. He could have used his mother's money and started a business, now they have nothing. Mark says they'll figure it out, and Jane believes things can be resolved.